And hello everyone, my name is Lowko, and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Now, a couple of days ago, I made a video on how to play Mutalisks in Zerg vs Zerg. And in Zerg vs Zerg, it is relatively tricky to pull them off. The same actually goes for Zerg vs Terran. Usually, if you make too many Mutalisks in Zerg vs Terran, you just sort of lose them to like a stray Widow Mine or a bunch of Marines that just stim forward and kill all of them. However, there is one matchup among many, well, you know, I guess one matchup among three for Zerg. And that is going to be Zerg vs Protoss, where you can actually go ahead and max out on Mutalisk and basically not lose a single game. I don't think there has been a game ever where I have more than 50 Mutalisk and actually lose, okay? Now, there's a couple of things about Mutalisk that are very important to note. First off, if you rush them out, you're gonna lose. Because basically what Protoss does, they go for like one base aggression, they go two base aggression, sometimes they macro and sit back, but most of the time if you go straight up to a lair and you go Mutalisk off of either 2 or 3 bases, you just sort of lose. Oftentimes, you know, you will just simply get like a 2 base all in against you, for example, Immortal Sentry Stalker, something like that, or even a Phoenix Opener right against your face, and your Mutalisk goes shut down. They're not very good at defending, they're not very good at like killing armies. However, there are certain moments where the Mutalisk play becomes stupidly powerful, and that is more often than not after you manage to either defend a 2 base aggression, so let's say they go for like that, you know, Immortal Sentry Stalker that I just talked about, and you defend against that. That, for example, would be a great moment to switch into them. But most importantly, it really starts to shine when you get more than 6 gas geysers up. So once you have 6 gas up, you can make a reasonable amount of Mutalisk. But since they're 100 gas and 100 minerals each, you really are looking for like 8 to 10 gas geysers. Now, in this particular game, I'm up against a Protoss player that is gonna sit back for the majority of the game. And I actually sort of misread the situation, and I start making a bunch of army thinking he was gonna go for a 2 base all-in. Now, oftentimes, you will see me use Mutalisk on the live stream when I'm sort of behind against Protoss, or, like I said, after a 2 base all-in. I can't really go ahead and go straight into Mutalisk just because it is much too vulnerable against all kinds of early game aggression. So in this particular game, I'm assuming my opponent is going for a 2 base all-in. I misread the situation. I find out that he indeed did go for a 3rd base after all, at which point I know that I'm behind because I sacrificed a lot of my early game economy to try and defend a 2 base all-in that wasn't coming. Now, at that point, when you are behind versus Protoss, there's a couple of cool things that you can go ahead and try and do. Basically, what I will go ahead and do in this particular match is focus on getting as many Mutalisk out as possible. And there's one simple reason for it. Like I said, once you get enough Mutalisk out, there is literally nothing that the Protoss can do. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, and I know it sounds a little bit imbalanced, and technically speaking, there are some things that Protoss can do, but if played correctly, I am like 99% of the time going to be very far ahead if I get more than enough Mutalisk out. Now, what is more than enough Mutalisk? Like I already mentioned, I'm looking at like 200 supply, minus the amount of drones that I have, so probably about 70 or so, and then pretty much have the remainder of that, at least a big chunk of that, spent in Mutalisk. So we're really looking at like 50 plus mutas. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. It's like, well, what do I do? What do I do if my opponent goes for Phoenixes? What do I do if my opponent goes for, you know, Blink Stalker? What if I, you know, get stormed? Or what if I got Archons against me? Right? These kind of like counters that Protoss has. There's one golden rule here. You just simply never, ever engage their army. That's it. You just don't engage the army. It sounds really stupid, it sounds really bad, but in most of the times, when the Protoss starts moving out across the map, right? And let's say they invested a bunch into Stalker, Archon, or whatever to try and counter Mutalisk, you can just simply run by with your Mutalisk and kill their base before they can kill yours. Because you're Zerg, you can just take the entirety of the map, and since they're Protoss, they're not gonna have a very easy time doing so. So, pretty much every single time, I think every single time that has happened to me, you can just kill them much faster than they can. Obviously, mutas are very fast. Sometimes you can go ahead and engage their army. For example, in this particular match, you will see me engage their Stalker Ball a bunch of times. But in most situations, you're much better off just simply never engaging them. Always counterattack, and there's one golden rule with that as well. You gotta make sure that you actually build a bit of a Spinecrawler fortress. But we'll go all over that in just a second. Now, as you may have noticed, I opened up a very standard here from my play. Made plenty of videos about that already on the YouTube channel. Basically just a good old 3 racks or 3 hatch before a despawning pool, and then I ended up Also adding on a bunch of workers, and eventually I'm looking around. I couldn't find my opponent's natural, so I'm like, well, I'm running this Zergling across right now. I couldn't find my opponent's natural. I start making a bunch of army here, assuming that there was going to be a 2-base all-in, because he took a lot of gas as well. Then I find that the 3rd base is just a finish. So mostly just a misreading of the situation by me, and at this point, as you may have noticed, economy-wise, I'm not in a strong position. Usually, if you're up against this kind of play from your Protoss opponent, you really want to make sure you have like more workers than them, right? Just so you have more income. And at this point, you know, you can see like I'm actually behind in workers, a really bad situation for me to be in. Now, on top of that, I've got an army that right now is not capable of moving out across the map. I don't have any upgrades on them. I don't have roach speed. I got Zergling speed, but I mean, there's going to be plenty of pylon overcharges right here available that I've got very little left to do. And I know very well that a good Protoss player is not going to be able to really give me the advantage here anymore. So what do I do here? I know very well that I'm going to be behind. I know that there's more than likely going to be some sort of aggression from my opponent as well. But I know that if he goes for a well-executed 3-base timing attack, there is very little chance that I'm going to be able to hold it with just my Roach Zergling, Roach Ravager kind of style, just because I won't have enough units. I didn't have the economy to really support that initially. So what I decide to do here is take a pretty big risk. I'm going straight up to a lair. I am going straight up to a spire here as well, and I am making non-stop drones. Got the 4th base coming up as well, obviously a bit of a risk as well, because if my opponent moves out right now, I have absolutely no clue on how to hold that. But I'm taking the risk here, knowing that more than likely my opponent is going to move out for at least a couple more minutes, and if I get a bunch of my Mutalisks out, it is going to be very, very helpful. Now, one important thing to note about Mutalisk is that they're really well complemented with Zerglings. As you may be aware, obviously Mutas and Zerglings, both like some of the fastest units in the game. You really are allowed to, you know, move across the map super quickly with those. And, you know, you can threaten a lot of counterattacks. So let's say I have a group of Mutas on the top side of the map and a group of Zerglings in the bottom side of the map. I can consistently try and counterattack my opponent. Now, as you can see, I am still making non-stop workers, and I'm immediately grabbing the gases at my 4th base. I know very well, once again, if he moves out, I'm gonna be behind, but I know if I'm gonna be playing a macro game right now, I will more than likely also just, you know, be behind right from the get-go here. And it turns out that my opponent sat back for a little bit too long. I got my Spire just about to finish up here. I am gonna try and make as many Mutalisks as possible, which I saved up a lot of gas for, and I now just basically have to cross my fingers and hope my opponent does not have a lot of stalkers. Now, since he's warping in adepts here, and since he does seem to have the upgrade on the adept as well, I'm just sort of gonna, you know, bank on the fact that that is indeed the case. I'm gonna bank on the fact that he doesn't have very much anti-air, at which point I am gonna be in a great position. Now, notice that his army right now, I took a risk because I lost that economy early on. Turns out his army has absolutely no defense or like no anti-air at all. And more importantly, he also did not bring his mothership core. He did not go ahead and bring his mothership core, which means he will not be able to teleport. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do here is actually counterattack. Now, here's a little subtle move, okay? While I'm moving out across the map, I know very well, like I've managed to defend this by just going through the Mutalisk play. Once again, took a huge risk, right? If 50% of the cases I would have lost right here already. So any of you Protoss players out there, just scout a little bit better. You will be able to figure out what's going on here. But anyway, my opponent didn't warp in any stalkers. I got a massive army. I got a lot of like Mutalisk already flying across the map. But right now is where the dirtiness starts to happen. And for you Protoss players out there, this might hurt a little. So I'm immediately going ahead and making more and more bases. I don't know, yeah, I do queue up 2 immediately. And the idea behind that, while I unpause the game once more, is that I go ahead and just make massive amounts of Mutalisk. In a little bit, I will try and get rid of my roaches as well. I really have absolutely no use for those anymore. I'm just killing whatever I can right now, but the basic idea for me is to go full on into drones and then into a bunch of Mutalisk as well. Once again, if I get to 50, I'm just never gonna engage his army, counterattack every single time. Now, since I am only making drones and since I'm only making mutas, and once again, this is a great way of coming back in Zerg vs Protoss, you just simply sit there and you make a lot of drones, right? You get a lot of income. So at this very moment in time, I've already got 86 workers, and I more than likely will start making a couple more in just a tad as well. Now, here's the kicker, I suppose, right? Since we're getting a lot more mineral income than we are getting gas income, I am just simply gonna go ahead and make a lot more gas geysers for obvious reasons. But with any kind of leftover gas, or with any kind of leftover minerals, I'm gonna put down a spine crawler forest. And the idea behind that, obviously, is that, let's say I have to go ahead and counterattack. I'm just simply gonna be able to sit back and wait with a bunch of my spine crawlers to, you know, slow him down even more. At which point I am guaranteed to pretty much every single time murder my opponent's units a little bit faster. And as you can see, I am making a bunch of micro mistakes, but we're still making more workers. We're still making more workers. I'm queuing up 10 more. I'm queuing up, yeah, up to 92 right now, which is honestly a little bit too much. You don't really want to go that far. But once again, I'm already planning to make some static defense. Now, since I know that I got a big amount of mutas right now already, I'm just sort of poking in and out. Now, notice on the minimap, I'm using around, you know, I'm using my hotkeys to move the rest of my army around as well. And the reason for that is that I want to get rid of these 13 roaches and the 1 ravager as well, just because the 1 ravager really doesn't add in anything, and the roaches just soak up a ton of supply that really shouldn't be used here. Now, obviously, I don't want to just sacrifice them, so I'm trying to pull his army out of position so I can move with the rest of my army into the 3rd base and potentially get a surround there. Sadly, I don't really get too much out of that at all, and my opponent, once again, does manage to do a nice bit of micro there to give him the advantage that he was looking for. Now I'm gonna be reinforcing the rest of my army with a, like, I'm actually sacrificing the roaches right now, but I'm reinforcing the army here with more Mutalisks and more Zerglings. And since +2/+2 upgrades are just about to finish, I'm just simply getting so much gas income. Like, look how much gas I got right now, right? I got, this is, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 6 bases? Yeah, that's 6 bases in total. We got 12 gas guys just going up right now. I actually thought I had 10 in this particular game. But since I got 12 gas geysers up right now, I will be able to just simply max out on the amount of Mutalisks that I am really looking for. Now, since mutas are 100 to 100, this is also where we start queuing up the spine crawlers and start building up that forest. And right now, it is basically just a waiting game. I'm waiting for the Protoss player to move out across the map. I'm waiting for him to, you know, basically put all of his eggs in one basket and try and go for the counter-offensive. Whereas I'm just simply sitting here, tacking up slowly but surely towards the hive as well, making more and more Mutalisks and building up that spine crawler forest. Now, playing this is really, really fun because oftentimes, you know, you're sort of like already given up on a game. At least that's how I go, you know? When we were at that moment where he had more workers than I did at like the 6-minute mark or something, I already sort of gave up on the game because I knew that my opponent, if played well, would get the victory anyway. And that's also the reason why you don't see this too much at the pro scene. However, when you are playing this style, oftentimes you can get so many damn wins still if you just sit back, make a ton of Mutalisks, put all your eggs in your own basket, I suppose, as well, and just go for a stupid amount of gases, hoping that your opponent makes the mistake of not moving out soon enough. Now, in this particular case, you can see I got so many mutas right now that I can just go ahead and pick off the phoenixes as soon as I get one little touch of them. I am adding on a couple of corruptors just in case he manages to whoop out a ton of them, but since I'm also counter-attacking right now with the Zerglings, I'm trying to, you know, take out as many of his bases as possible. I just simply will be able to, you know, just get more and more and more ahead. One funny thing to note as well about Stalkers, in small numbers, Mutalisks are not that great against Stalkers, but the nice advantage that you have as mutas is that you can all put them very closely together. So total right now, I got 41 Mutalisks out on the map. My opponent has a bunch of Stalkers, but Stalkers all need a little bit of like individual private space, right? Whereas mutas just sort of can sit back and, you know, all clump up together. Which means that if you have a really big amount of mutas, you can start taking a couple of pot shots here and there against Stalkers as well. And that's exactly what I'm doing right here, right? I'm just pointing in and out, knowing that my opponent is not really going to be able to do very much here. And since I've got so many leftover gas anyway, it's a completely safe maneuver. And once again, like, if you have enough mutas, Phoenixes also are not that great of an answer. Now, I still got a lot of gas left, or I still got a lot of, you know, minerals left over. So it's time for a bit more of a Spinecrawler wall very shortly, at least. I know I add on a whole bunch more, but we're just building up that defense. Now, I still got so much army that while I don't really need to engage my Protoss opponent, I just simply got so much stuff that I don't really need to, like, not do that either, right? I'm just poking in and out, checking whether or not he's expanding, checking whether or not he's getting more and more economy up, but I'm mostly just waiting for him to move out across the map. In many occasions, though, if he moves out right now, I'm just simply going to be able to kill him much faster than he would be able to kill me. while adding on more and more spine crawlers here. Now, you gotta be careful. One mistake I've made in the past is that you get so caught up making that spine crawler fortress that you don't actually replace any workers and you end up with like, you know, 30 workers left over, which actually oftentimes can cost you the game because you simply don't have any income to reinforce any of your army either after you lose it. So I'm gonna be reinforcing more and more. As you can see, I'm still got 84 workers, poking back and forth, building up that spine crawler wall, and just grabbing the advantage here while playing a very, very dirty match. Now, I have been playing a little bit of Protoss as well, as you guys are aware, right? I've been playing a bunch of random as well. If you're interested in those videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you get a notification when I upload them. One of the things I've noticed when playing Protoss is that playing against Mutalisks is the worst. You never have an idea where the mutas are gonna come from. You can never really play against them very well either, just because they're gonna be running you around so often, and the constant threat of like Zerglings moving in as well is very, very terrifying. I mean, if you take a look right now at the Protoss point of view, he has absolutely no clue where my army is located. He's trying his very best to deal with this, but at this point, I got so many Mutalisks. I mean, I got 47 at this point. I'm just simply gonna run around, or fly around technically, never engage his army and start picking away at him. And it's the most frustrating thing to play against when you are a Protoss player. So long story short, if you're behind in Zerg versus Protoss, consider taking a risk, getting a lot of bases going, getting up to like 8, 10, 12, like 14 gas even, and just make non-stop Mutalisk, knowing that once you max out with them, there is practically no way of losing. And oftentimes you get Protosses like this that decide to not so much GG and just sort of leave the game. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you haven't already, hit that like button down below. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button as well. And I want to thank you all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!